All right, it is 7:10 and I'm just going to go ahead and get started now. Thank you for your patience. Good evening and welcome to the Beaufort County Democratic Party's Summer 2025 listening sessions, a series of virtual roundtables which are intended to amplify the voices of our diverse communities here in Beaufort County. Tonight's listening session spotlights Hispanic and Latino voters. My name is Kathleen Hughes, and I serve as chair of the Beaufort County Democratic Party. South Carolina, and particularly Beaufort County, now plays a significant role in national and state politics. Due to South Carolina's early primary status, presidential hopefuls are already visiting, and national media outlets are attending local political events to discuss the needs, hopes, and concerns of voters. Additionally, Beaufort County voters are crucial to winning back Congressional District 1, the seat currently held by Congresswoman Nancy Mace. And local candidates will soon be running to stop the GOP supermajority in the South Carolina State House. This political prominence makes you, the voters of Beaufort County, very important people. Through your voices and personal stories, local and federal candidates will gain a better understanding of the needs of our communities. The listening sessions will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, promoted through social media, and shared directly with our candidates. So, let's get started. I would like to introduce our moderator, Anna Ramirez. Anna is a Bluffton-based social worker, therapist, and community organizer. Anna also serves as the second vice chair of the Beaufort County Democratic Party. Anna will lead panelists through a series of 4 questions intended to highlight the concerns and needs of our Hispanic and Latino community and individuals in this moment. The questions were provided to the panelists in advance. Panelists are asked to keep their responses to around 3 minutes so that each panelist has the equal opportunity to speak. And finally, to our viewers who are not panelists, please remain muted at all times. If you would like to submit questions, please do so through the chat box, and Anna may address 1 or 2 at the end if there is time. So thank you once again, and with that, I will turn this evening's discussion over to Anna Ramirez.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I am Anna Ramirez. I'm, like she said, social worker, local activist, second vice chair for the Beaufort County Democratic Party. So I'm super excited to be here and to do this just because, first and foremost, I think the Latino Hispanic vote is a very underrated and untapped market that is finding its voice for a multitude of reasons. And so I don't want to take away from our speakers, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and let them introduce themselves a little bit. And we'll go ahead and start with Italia.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Italia Parisi. Am I supposed to introduce myself in English or Spanish?
English, we have someone translating for us.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So my name is Italia Parisi. I'm a local mortgage and insurance broker. And I'm also the chair of the Gullah Latino Advisory Council. I am the Latino liaison of the MLK Committee for Justice on the island. I am the first Latino to ever be on Deep Wells board. And I feel like I'm on the Low Country Immigration Coalition. I almost forgot one. Happy to be here. Happy to be a part of this discussion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we'll go to Carolina next.
Hey, good evening. I'm Carolina. I'm a concerned resident of Beaufort County. I've been here my whole life. I'd love to see us get together and see what we can change.
All right. Sebastian?
Hi, my name is Sebastian Hernandez. I'm an immigration attorney here in Bluffton. Been living here most of my life. I am a member of the Latino Advisory Council with Italia. and also of the Low Country Immigration Coalition, and a newly selected board member for Low Country League of Volunteers. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Julio Ortega.
name is Julio Ortega. Been here since 1994. Business owner of two businesses here in Hilton Head and Beaufort County, and running 14 people in my business. Oh, glad to be here.
Thank you. And Gabby Garcia.
My name is Gabby. I'm a student at USCB and I work at T-Mobile. I was born and raised in Beaufort County, and I'm just a little concerned about what's going on. And I've always been concerned. Since like 2016, I was putting Bernie signs on the side of 278. So um, I'm just always trying to get involved on where I can, but now for sure with these upcoming issues.
Thank you. All right. So let's not, waste any time. Let's get to it and start talking about those issues. So the first question that was sent out to our panelists was, what do you see as the most important issue for Beaufort County's Hispanic and Latino community? So we centered it really around this space. I'm going to go ahead and shoot that first question over to Carolina.
Thank you, Anna. Honestly, for me personally, it is immigration enforcement within our community. I feel like I'm afraid for our community, mostly because people are, afraid to, especially with this new program with 287G, they're afraid to go to work, go to the grocery store, go to school, take their kids to school, attend big events, important events for their children. And I just think it's very sad. It's very divisive. It's something that works against our community as a whole. So that's mainly what my concern is.
Right. And it is concerning. It's a big topic right now. I know that it's getting a lot of national news and local news. And I've seen you out there protesting, rallying, fighting against the machine. So thank you for what you're doing. There's so many voices that don't have that ability. So it's good to see, and more so, the younger generations. I'll pivot this question maybe over, or a little bit of that, to Sebastian, who's had, who grew up here as well, and has seen that now what we might be experiencing is a growth in that voter base. Sebastian, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I echo everything that Carolina had to say. Definitely right now the community's main concern is immigration for obvious reasons, right? I think if I had to add anything to the issue that is equally as important is our community's access to reputable and reliable information. And part of that is because, as an immigration attorney, I am constantly hearing, hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And like maybe 50% of it is just fake. The things that somebody posted on TikTok or on a YouTube short or on Facebook just to get clicks or views. And so there's so much information and disinformation that's being spread to our community that it has people going left and right. Things from, hey, I'm a US citizen, I can't fly to my home country anymore. Or, hey, Trump is going to start giving immigrants, all immigrants work cards now if you pay $1,000. It's just random things, right? And so because there's so much fear, it pushes people to just try to be informed, and it also makes them susceptible to all types of misinformation.
Correct. Thank you. All right, Italia, touch on a little bit of what's important to you for the Latino voter base in Beaufort County.
So many things are important to me for the Latino-based voters. Number one, I had the opportunity to work a voter registration table in front of a very known grocery store, Latino grocery store in Bluffton. And that was obviously before the new administration took change. There was fear then. And it's been here for a long time. I think it's amplified now for the many reasons that we all know of, and not to patronize anybody, but we know what we're talking about. So the fear is there, and one of the biggest challenges that I've been working on through my different not-for-profits is not only making people understand, and by people I mean lawmakers, mayors, county councils, make them understand what it is for a Latino, of course, and or a Gullah, to live here. What do we run into that you don't? And we were making major headway in those conversations. Of course, now everybody is pivoting back away. They're pivoting away from those keywords that we're going to probably get into in some topics about diversity and equality and inclusion. And we were working towards that, towards letting them understand, we can't just go get our license renewed if we can't show we're citizens in South Carolina, right? So then what happens? I'm going around with a driver's license from another state, trying to do the right thing as an immigrant or underserved community member is very difficult in the Low Country. And when we brought these I don't know, borders, things that we run into back last year to the senators and just different people that were involved, they had no clue. They admitted to me, I don't know these constituents. I don't know you all. So we were really working towards building that cultural bridge so that the people that make the decisions around here for everybody in the community will include everybody in the community, right? So I think the biggest challenge is not only educating those that don't know us, but regaining the fear of us, regaining the trust in us. We will go back in the shadows. We will pay somebody to take us to work if we're scared to drive. So we were trying to pull Latinos into the main light, getting the lawmakers to understand us. And now I believe everything is going backwards.
Right.
And that's a challenge.
And it brings up an incredible point, right, as to the work that was being done that we're back, tracking on now. I know several families, for example, who have very legal children who can vote, and they're afraid to send them out for fear of getting that attention called on them. But I think we're all in agreement at this point, and this is why these listening sessions are amazing, because it's going to amplify the voices, and we are at a point now where silence is just not an option. So what about you, Julio? Tell me a little bit about what you think is the most important aspect for you as a voter in Beaufort County.
Well, one of the things is the worries is out there, same as Carolina was thinking, and then I think it's what we need to do to make our families in a safe place, because there's worry. I got 3 children's wife and myself, and I got a lot of families that I worry about them, same as I worry for my employees. And then what we need to do to get to take this care of our people away from them, to be out there and be thinking that I'm going to make it home, or that I'm going to make it home, or when this is going to take place, when they're going to have to take me and send me back to my country when I never did any crime to anybody in this country.
Right. Thank you for that. And I think Julio brings, everyone, the topic of conversation of immigration is going to be risen a lot in this, because it is a very big thing. I mean, just from a psychological standpoint, right? This is like scientific. This is how the brain works and how it applies in everyday nature. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological needs come first before safety, but you can't meet those needs if you don't feel safe. And then that creates a tirade of additional problems. So it's good that you guys are bringing this up and that it's out there, because it's going to speak volumes to other things that are going to be affected by it. Healthcare, right? If we're not good mentally, it's been shown that it will affect health outcomes. So it's one of those things that go hand in hand. Gabby, how about you? What about for you? Most important voter thing in Beaufort County?
For me as a student, my biggest concern is education currently. I feel like from what I've been looking on, just my own research, lawmakers are expanding on like private school vouchers versus public education. And private school, especially in Beaufort County, my best friend has an 8-year-old and she lives on Hilton Head. So thankfully, Hilton Head's a little bit of a better school than most in Beaufort County, but it's still $10,000 a year. And as a single mom or even a Latino family, or I feel like any normal family in the middle class, that's just an expense that's just out of pocket. And I can only imagine the pricing to go up in the future when I have kids. So I know families like mine can't afford that. We rely on public schools, which in Beaufort County, 30% of students are Hispanic. And so when funding gets pulled away, like programs like the ESL program, special education, free meals for those students, that might be the only meal that they could see for a couple hours a day while their parents work, is kind of devastating to see. Because thankfully, my best friend, like I said, she's able to pay for those school lunches, but her son has the burden of having to share sometimes. And it's kind of sad to see even on Hilton Head, as expensive as those students like live in their house, it's just very sad to see. And then in addition, the barriers after high school. So South Carolina is one of the only or 3 states that, along with Alabama and Georgia, that don't allow undocumented students to receive in-state tuition. So another close friend of mine, he was DACA.
Yeah.
So he went to USC in Columbia, paid almost 50 grand. And like it was ridiculous. It's almost 3 to 4 times more than what normal students are. And then most of them can't even apply to public colleges anyway because they're blocked. So they have to pay these out-of-state rates, out of country rates, and it's just expensive for dreamers who were brought here at 2 years old and had no choice and just want to go to school and get educated. And a lot of these jobs don't pay well if you're not educated. So it's just kind of a catch-22. You're just in a trade job for the rest of your life, and you can't advocate for your community because you're just so tired. You're working. And that's what I feel like a lot of Latinos are just doing. They just want to stay under the radar and don't want to worry about these things. But education matters because, like I said, while it's 30% of students that are Hispanic in these schools, it's growing, where it's one of the fastest growing populations in these schools is Latinos. And then I pulled up some statistics at USCB. So USCB, just about 36% of Latinos complete a 4-year degree. And only about 27% of Latino students graduate from the community college, which is within 6 years. And most student in the South Carolina average about 31,000 in student loans. And so most people don't even want to get into that issue of student loans because of the debts that their families have to carry and the debts that they have back home and everything like that. So it's just not a Latino issue. It's a South Carolina issue about wanting your kid to succeed, because even regardless of these students not being able to get these programs in the public schools, it applies to, like I said, special needs and everybody else that needs these free lunches and these programs like after school activities that keep these kids busy.
And you bring up an excellent point with like the free lunches. There's so much information out there, right? Scientifically studied, peer reviewed, that shows that, academic outcome, especially for younger kids, is very much tied to hunger, right? If they're hungry, they're not going to do well academically. So to peel back those programs is a huge concern. And it's good to hear that. And it's good to hear these things and hear that, although we have this added layer of concern, right, that's causing this disconnect for us within our mental health as well, we are concerned about the things that everyone else is concerned about. We want the things. We want that American dream. That is what was always told to everyone. If you work hard and you do the things. So thank you for bringing that up, which is a good way to go into our second question. We're going to tailor this one a little bit more specific to you and your families. So I'm going to start with Sebastian. The question on the table right now is, what is the most important issue for you, your family, and your specific household right now?
Yeah, so I would say right now it's has a lot to do with access to healthcare and things like that. And insurance. I'm getting to the point where now I'm having to think about, okay, how am I going to take care of my parents? So I'd say that would be the most immediate thing. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of the reasons why I'm facing so many of these issues now is just because I don't want to say that, that this was something that was necessary, but it would have just been really great if my parents would have had access to just basic information that maybe your average American knows. So like, for example, here's what interest rates are. Here's what a high yield saving account is. You should be saving for your retirement. You should be doing X, Y, and Z, things that, you know, um, a lot of people they just know to do, right? But if you're an immigrant, you're not really thinking about any of those things. You're just trying to think of like, okay, how am I going to get by? How am I going to get established? And so now, right, as I'm getting to that age where maybe many of my peers have, that were born here or their parents are, have been here for generations, they're not really having to worry about those things. Whereas I'm having to plan my future as to, okay, if I get a house, I need something that is going to have enough space maybe for my mom and dad, something with a room in the first floor, so because they're aging and things like that. And so right now, for me, I'm seeing the effects of that lack of information in my day to day because I'm having to kind of parent my parents about a lot of issues that I kind of had to figure out for myself, right? And I think about I know the question is about my household specifically, but it makes me it reminds me of being 15, being in high school, and having to kind of figure out life in the US for my parents as well because I was the English speaker. And so I know that there's a lot of kids out there that are maybe going through a lot of these questions and issues, or the beginning of some of these issues because their parents just don't know, right? So um, I know that that's kind of similar to what I was alluding to in the first answer as well as in regards to like access to info and reputable sources and all that. But it's real. I mean, it's things that I didn't really think that I would be thinking about now that I'm at this age, but um it's an everyday thing, and I try to do the best that I can for my family. And so we're a group of people that were very family oriented, but what if I was dealing with these issues when I was Gabby's age, right? She's juggling school and all those things. It would have just been really hard. And so I think if this was addressed, maybe, there's like things like Financial Peace University and things like that that are offered for different people. If it was, I don't know if it's offered in Spanish, but if it was, or if it was just given to the public or promoted or whatever the case is, those little things can help families, maybe not immediately, but 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, it can help them a lot.
Thank you. And that's an excellent point to that lack of access of information. Because again, when your priorities are survival, there's certain things you're not thinking about. So I'm going to pivot this one to Julio to ask, Julio, what's important for you in your family right now? Having, immigrated from another country, you build a profitable business, and now you have children that are going to go out in the world. That's a good question. What information was accessible to you? What did you have access to in providing now to them that access? You're muted. You're muted. It's on the screen if you hit the unmute. All right, we'll go to Julio as soon as he unmutes himself. Si buscas en la pantalla, dice audio o video. A la par del audio debes de poder sacar el audio de ahí.
Presione el screen primero.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and no, todavía no. ¿Tienes tu teclado? Oprime el spacebar y hold it. Let's see if that works. No. Okay. All right. We're en la pantalla debe de ver una selección de opciones en abajo de las caritas, de donde nos vemos los videos. Hay uno que dice audio a mano izquierda abajo.
Amiga, yo creo que I think he's already on audio. He just needs to. El micrófono ahí abajito, Julio. Ve tu carita, ¿dónde está tu carita? Si ves ahí en la esquinita hay un micrófono, ¿lo ves?
La otra opción, Julio, es vuélvete a agregar con tu teléfono. Okay. All right. So in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and pivot to Atayo. Atayo, things for you that are important for your household.
Okay, so let me just comment a quick bit on Sebastian's comment. Sebastian, that isn't a Latino community. Financial education is lacking throughout our entire community. I'm a firm believer that they should teach financial and credit things while kids are in school before they start getting all the credit card things when they turn 18 and offers. So it is a lack of financial education and financial health is consistent throughout all kinds of communities that I've seen. So I agree with everything you said. For me and my family, the biggest concern right now is this 287G. Because I'll share a story before, when we still have the jail enforcement model. And this is going to scrub anybody that gets charged with a crime. They're going to scrub those they think might be illegal. I don't know what that process is. I'm sure it has to appear of what you look like, what you sound like, and what your last name is. I'm not sure. But they already have that in place. So the minute someone gets incarcerated, they do run their name. And before you know it, they're on ICE hold and they're getting sent to Charleston. And they haven't even been charged yet. They've been charged, but they haven't been proven guilty yet. So it's already in the system. So the biggest question I have about the 287G is I don't understand why we need it. And it's a fear for me because I got pulled over when I first moved to South Carolina about a couple of years ago. I still had my Kentucky license because it's like pulling teeth because I'll go to the DMV. I never thought they were going to want my, proof of citizenship. I mean, it was, and so I was just like, forget it. My license is good until 2025, But I do now finally have it, but it was not an easy thing to do. There was so much red tape. So many times someone that speaks perfect English and knows what documents are that I would get sent away from the DMV for something. So I had my Kentucky license. I get pulled over they said I didn't have my turning signal on. Whether I did or not, that was up in the air. I thought I did. Very nice gentleman. Thank goodness. But as soon as he saw that I had a Kentucky license, the questions started coming that were not appropriate questions. Like, why don't you have a South Carolina license? I haven't had a chance, sir. I've had a little bit of difficulty when I went to the DMV, but this license here is not expired. I just haven't had the chance. That hasn't went well for me when I went to the DMV. The next question. Well, you speak really good English. How do you speak such good English? I grew up here. I went to school. I'm like looking for answers because they were odd to me. And then, of course, the third question out of his mouth was, well, are you legal here? I said, yes, sir. And we went through the motions. He gave me a ticket. As soon as we by the way, I was in the school. I was turning into the school to drop my daughter off school. So I was in the car line, basically. So my then middle schooler says, Mom, why did he ask you all those questions? And I said, I don't know. And she said, does he ask everybody those questions? I said, I doubt it. So my 14-year-old daughter realized very quickly that I was racially profiled. We were racially profiled because she was in the car with me. So now, do you think I'm on a little bit of attention when I see a policeman behind me now? Mm-hmm. And so now we have this 287G that says that they will apparently they can just lock you up until they figure it out. People don't have time for them to figure it out. You don't get to work if you're locked up. You've got kids to feed you can't feed. You've got mortgage payments, rental payments. Life doesn't stop while they're figuring it out.
Right.
And that's a big fear to me because I thought to myself, and I actually cried about it because if you know me, I'm kind of emotional. I cried about it because I thought about all my clients and all my friends that English is their second language. And they wouldn't know what the officer maybe even is asking, and they wouldn't know what to say. And if they stay silent, they feel like they're being defiant. And so all this turns into a big old tumbleweed that just keeps going and flowing.
Right.
And so, along with other things, when we get into the real estate side of things, I think it'd be nice to educate some of you on the call that don't know. But that is really my biggest fear. And I have them. My kids they were born here.
Yeah.
I was born in Chile, but I'm totally legal here.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that other people that think it's not that big a deal, and if you're not a criminal, why are you worried? I wasn't being a criminal that day
Right.
by not using my traffic light. It was a civil traffic misdemeanor, maybe.
Yeah.
But do you see where that one stop
Mhm.
could really detriment a whole
Yeah.
family? Even
It's
if I would have,
scary.
it's scary. And I lived it. It was me.
Yeah.
And so and that is a very small way of explaining how easy something very small can turn your life around. And I know I only got about a minute left, but I want to add this because I feel like stories resonate with people. I had a client, I helped him buy his first house. He's not legal here. He's not. But I do loans for illegal people. The loan business don't care. They want interest rate from anybody, right? That's not me, by the way. That's the banks. But anyway, we closed on the house, and then about a week or two later, his wife called me. Can I please see you? Can I please come to your office? Something's going on. So, long story short, apparently, when they were moving out of their home, they donated, they thought, a piece of furniture that they thought was donatable. The thrift place that they donated at said that it was junk. So he got a dumping charge. How many times I've taken things to a thrift store or a donation place in the middle of the night when I'm moving, I can count. I mean, I've done it a lot.
Yeah.
So they obviously, I guess this place had a camera, and so they had a picture of his, and so it was something that a natural person would do, donate something they thought was donatable as they're moving out of their home. Before you know it, the sheriff's looking for him. And they called me. They wanted my help asking for this, not the sheriff, but a sheriff officer. I called them and they're like, turn yourself in. It'll be all right. I don't know what to guide them. I'm trying to connect them with a good immigration attorney in the meantime. But everything's in a rush now. We're rushed now. And so, so he did do the right thing. He turned himself in to Beaufort County Sheriff's Office on a Saturday because it was the only day he could take off the morning to go do this, thinking everything would be worked out as he was told and as we were told in the call. They never mentioned anything about a possible ICE hold. They don't care to mention it. So he goes and does what he thinks is the right thing that he should be doing. And that was on a Saturday. By Monday, he was already on the ICE hold. He was already in Charleston, and it took him 3 months after I hooked him up with a good immigration attorney to get back home to his family. So they went 3 months after buying a brand new house with a brand new mortgage payment without his income.
That's horrible.
Now, there are other families rallied around him, like cousins and sisters, and helped the mom get through the first couple of payments. But that, again, is another example of something so simple,
Right.
and that is not an actual, dumping is a crime, but is it a deportable crime?
Right. And thank you for sharing those very real stories. That's exactly what we're going to see happen. And I know that that's a serious concern in households. Julio, were you able to get your microphone working on your phone? Try your phone. ¿Y el teléfono? Ah,
Julio, si miras en tu teclado, en la parte abajo de izquierda, si ves algo que dice Alt, ALT, y presionas eso con la letra A la misma vez, te debería quitar tu mute si estás usando el teclado. Alt y A la misma vez.
all right. We'll keep an eye on that. All right. How about you, Carolina? Tell me some things that are important for you in your home.
Well, with the it's very interesting how you tell those stories, right? Because I feel like as a community, like we're desensitized to those situations now. You know, we're so used to it happening that it's it's normalized, right? Within our community. We know that if somebody gets stopped, that's the first thing we question, right? Like, are they going to take them? What did they do? Like, it doesn't matter what they did. Like, what kind of officer is it? You know, we question ourselves so many things and we just come into panic mode. Like you said, you know, everything was rushed. And I feel like I've gone through that situation, especially with my husband not being able to know if he's going to be able to get home safely. You know, even though we've been through the immigration process for now 14 years, he hasn't been able to get much help. And it's something that does affect us in our home, you know. And another thing that does affect us is, you know, my parents were naturalized and they come in and out of the country. They're older and they are afraid every single time they have to come into the country. They don't know it within this time frame, right? They don't know if they're going to be able to come in. You know, they have panic attacks. It's gotten to a point that, you know, it can trigger something that, you know, they could put a 65-year-old lady, you know, in a detention center while they figure it out, you know. And it's very sad that no matter what kind of documentation or not documentation we have, like we're still targeted by the way that we're looking, by the way that we talk, our accent, you know. It's it's very sad that we have to go through this. You know,
And I think it just goes back to the point, right, that we're making, that it's very hard, you know, the session is geared, right, to give candidates this view of what we're concerned about. And instead of thinking about like, oh, shoot, you know, you as someone who can obtain healthcare, like I need to go look at healthcare because what if I need a doctor? You're thinking of, is my husband going to make it home? What's going to happen, you know. And those scenarios exist, and they take over, and it's a very unequitable, unjust system that we're living in. And I think we can pick that up in our next question, but I just want to pitch over to Gabby real quick, and just get from her, you know, I know you're a student, you know, you're young, but for you on a you know, for candidates, or like for you, what is important as a voter?
Um, Me currently, I live alone, and I've been kind of afraid for not for me, but for my neighbors, just kind of how ignorance has been allowed to grow and it's been encouraged and unchecked, especially in the name of public safety. Um, but I know people who are literally like afraid to work, to drive, like you said, to speak up, and not because they're necessarily in danger, but because they are treated like they don't belong or necessarily don't have the same rights or don't have the same abilities to get the same assistance as other people. And then the last meeting with Sheriff Tanner, I just felt that was my very first interaction with him. I've never actually attended a public meeting before like that. I've, you know, voted and but as like something to that extent, it was just very disappointing, but very motivating to keep attending because when someone brought up being undocumented, he said, put being undocumented on the shelf. Like, we're here to get crimes. And it was very dismissive because it's people's realities. And if it's inconvenient to him, like how you measure community trust, I asked him, like, how do you know the community trusts you? And he says, well, my 150 deputies tell me every day and I don't have any complaints. And I think that's kind of not true, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. Um, because I know a couple deputies, you know, that quit and went to town of Bluffton, you know, just
Yeah.
neither here nor there. And I'm just frustrated because with the data, he's always saying that back in 2008 and 2012, 287G was very helpful, but in their public reports, there's one, they don't put demographics, which is very frustrating because how can you judge if something was especially working when you're not publicly posting these demographics that matter? It's very surface level reporting, and the crime data documents, they're copy pasted from year to year. There's no breakdown of race or immigration status as if those things don't matter, but they do because these same reports are used to justify harmful policies like 287G. And that to me is just that from like 2023, when I did a couple research, only 32% of crimes were cleared, and yet 2,300 arrests were made. 634 of them were drug offenses, and many of them were minor. And that has been consistent year after year, despite the population growth since 2010. And it's crazy because those reported offenses dropped from like the 9,000 range to the 5,000 range. So when crime is going down and fear mongering is going up, you have to really kind of ask who benefits from that. So I feel like safety starts with transparency and accountability and leaders that care about getting it all right. And when we don't have that and they act like we're stupid or we look at YouTube and TikTok for our research, it's kind of just, it's demeaning because we're not stupid. And your data is public, but we can send these FOIA requests and get more data. So it's okay. That's just
No, you're right on. And I think to some degree, you know, you don't really have to peel back too much of that surface to kind of come to some idea of why they have that by design, right? You know, racial profiling is real. Injustices already occur in communities, and you're right, it's running rampant and blatant. So I know that that's a concern, you know, for you in your home right now, just by oh, okay, just, you know, by what you're experiencing. All right, Julio, we're gonna try one more time. Talk, let's see if it works. Kind
Still
of
don't work?
there you are.
I'm here.
Okay, what is important to you in your home?
Well, it's hold on.
Don't touch your phone, Julio, you're on. Just talk.
All right. One of my worries is my children.
Okay.
What's gonna happen to my children? I'm going to trying to retire soon. What's gonna happen to our retirement plans, our insurance, our all retirements that we're trying to, you know, that way I can have it decent retirement when that time comes. But that's one of the things that worry me a lot. You know, insurance are so expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to afford an insurance. Right now, you know, I'm paying through the roof to get my health insurance. You know, and I gotta do it for my wife and myself. And then, I mean, with all those prices, sometimes they cannot afford it to do that. But I work from 4 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night to try to provide for all those expenses.
That's hard, and you're not wrong. I mean, insurance costs are ridiculous. And again, pivoting back to like the collective message here, right? We have layers of worries that mirror other populations in this country, with this added little oopsie, right, that we're having to deal with. So it is concerning to have to worry about how you're going to insure your children and you know, thereafter. And I know we just got that Social Security report, which is just horrible looking, and the expectations and the projections that are coming from that. I know that I still have a ways to go myself before I can collect. Julio, you're on the cusp of, you know, retiring and hopefully one day being able to collect Social Security benefits that you worked really hard for. And I'm sure that not all your trajectory here, you qualified for those benefits. So you probably spent a great deal of your work life, you know, where you won't qualify for that amount, and only from here to here from where you were naturalized going forward. So, but even then, imagine getting to that point, working so hard, that American dream, and then being told, we're run out of money. Oh, and by the way, we also deported the $14 billion worth of people that were contributing to this. So just one of those things. We're going to go ahead and move on to legislation. And I'm going to pivot to Italia first because I want to get a little bit more feedback on, you know, real estate and the concerns within the Latino voter for real estate, housing specifically, and any legislation that you know about or that you think is important for us to voice our opinions on.
I've got one topic I'd like to stick with on this one because I can go a million topics on this.
Okay.
But there's one
let's
that
do
I
the
think
one.
that there's one that I think that if we make it very clear to those to the powers that be, I guess they don't understand. But I'm gonna break it down. Okay, so we spoke about how difficult it is to get a South Carolina license. Okay, even if you have a work visa, which means you're legal here, if you go to, it is a process that is not like someone else going to get a renewed license. So I go in there, I've been legal, I've got my work visa, I've got my social that says I'm allowed to be here and work here. I've got my, even let's just say I already had my South Carolina is expiring. So the DMV in South Carolina sends the immigration paperwork to immigration to vet it, and they let you leave with the DMV with a sheet of paper that says, "Oh, by the way, the picture on the top of this paper of this license is good and for now." That paper is not going to serve any purpose if someone was to get pulled out over in Jasper County or Georgia because it's just a Beaufort County paper. So let's talk about property taxes and how this fits in. When you purchase a home in South Carolina, right now I'm zoning into Beaufort County. Let's just talk about Beaufort County. When you buy a home here, everybody, and it's your primary residence, you have to apply to keep your 4% tax assessment as a primary resident of the home. I'm talking about your home occupancy, right? Well, you have to apply. On that application, it asks you for what? Your South Carolina driver's license. So a lot of people that may be having just issues or in pause time of waiting for it to come back and all this extra red tape that an immigrant needs to go through, then you're exposing yourself, number one, to getting pulled over. Number two, once you don't provide what that application calls for, you will be assessed at a 6% rate. Now, that sounds like a 2% difference, and it sounds like it's not bad. I tell you what, I guarantee you the tax bill doubles and sometimes triples. So now a lot of the loans, people pay their taxes in their payment, right? So what happens to their monthly housing payment? It goes up $200, $300, $400 because of the taxes that are assessed. So I talked with the Beaufort County assessor. I had a meeting with her. She was very, very open and honest with me. She's an African-American lady, very nice. She knew the questions I was going to have for her. So she said the one way around it is to give equity and ownership of this much percent to somebody that is a citizen, and then maybe they'll accept the application. And do you see where I'm going with this? Like how, so you're not only getting my income tax money, state and federally, because let me tell you something right now, and let me make it clear, people that are not documented, they pay taxes. They have what's called an individual tax identification number that is issued by the IRS, because one thing's for certain and three things for sure, the government wants all of our tax money, every one of us. So we have someone that you're only supposed to not get this tax 4% rate if you don't live there. But the application calls for documents that you can't provide even though you live there. So your cost of living in this home is increasing and year by year because tax assessments usually rarely go down. Like rarely will you see your county property tax go lower in a year. So it is also a domino effect. It is unfair. Another thing is that if you were to sell a property and you're an I-10 person, a person that is still working out their immigration issues, but they pay taxes, they have businesses here, they do a lot here. They contribute to definitely the housing market a lot in Beaufort County. I did my numbers kind of quickly earlier when I spoke to Anna about this meeting, and I can tell you that 96% of my clientele in the Low Country are Latinos. 48% of those are I-10. They are not quite documented. They don't have their papers back. They're still working that out, right? So this affects a lot of people. And these are people that are buying homes, that are contributing to our economy. If people ain't buying homes, our country's going to hurt. It was the mortgage bond rates that saved us through COVID. So there again goes that education piece. And the reason why those that can make laws or make a difference, the reason why they don't know is because they don't have to deal with it. They see the application and they just give what they need to give, and it's approved, and then they go on with their happy ways. So to me, I think that's something that is feasibly addressed and can be overcome. To me, okay, let's say you want to charge them a little bit extra for the first 2 years, but if somebody can prove they've been somewhere for a year or 2 years as their primary residence and still can't give the actual exact forms that they want, that's just that's unjust, in my opinion. It's just unfair and it's unjust. And then as a mortgage professional, I hear they come back to my office and go, my payment went up so and so. And I say, I bet it was your taxes. And then, did you fill out the application? Well, no. Well, then, of course, I help them fill out the application. And the minute they're I-10, I look at them and go, we have a very skinny chance that they're going to accept it. But it's always worth a try. And that is something that Beaufort County needs to really look at. Jasper County already has. Jasper County already has second pieces of documentation that someone can provide that's on title that will show their primary residence to get that 4% tax rate. And they're just one county away. If they can figure it out, why can't we?
Because it's almost as if they know the population.
They do.
Right? It's almost as if it's all right. Thank you for that, for sure. Sebastian, I'm going to ask you any pieces of legislation that you feel are important to Latino Hispanic voters?
Yeah, I mean, there's too many, right? I think 287G has been the one that's been mentioned the most. I've been trying to, bring different things to the table so that I'm not just echoing everything that everybody else is saying. But the one that I actually wanted to speak on is something that Italia initially touched on, which is driver's licenses or some type of ID. I think part of the reason why 287G was motivated was because I think the sheriff's department, the sheriff's office wants to be able to identify somebody, right? If they're handed a passport and it's from, a different country, they want to be able to know that that's the person that they're talking to, right? I think one solution is to let people have driver's licenses or some type of ID that helps that officer run a driver's license number or an ID number through their system so that they can verify that that's the person that they're speaking with. And it seems like an impossible thing to achieve. And I know maybe as a county, that's not something that's as easy for us to do because it has to be a state issue. But I remember when I was in law school in 2018, being an intern with the ACLU of New Jersey and standing outside of City Hall with signs marching saying driver's licenses for people. And 2 years later, it's being signed by the governor. I think it was Phil Murphy or something. But the point being that if you make the effort, there's a chance it can happen. And for that to happen, it requires a concerted effort, not just from the Latino community, but also from other members, from other communities, to demonstrate that they stand together in solidarity for that issue. And it's something that's been very helpful for New Jersey. And I wish we could see it here because it's something that's not necessarily out of the realms of possibility. I remember in the early 2000s, people had driver's licenses in the state of South Carolina, whether they had documents or not. In fact, it's only recent that it's been taken away and that it's no longer a thing. So we're not asking for something that hasn't been done before in our state. But at a lower and more local level, there are counties across the United States that have issued some type of government ID to immigrants. And I think that type of documentation could even be useful for an issue like Italia's issue with providing some type of ID for the 4% thing, because God knows I've dealt with that issue with my parents too. So it's you know, it's a matter of communicating to the community that, look, we hear you, we recognize that you're an integral part, right? I think our community makes up a huge chunk of the labor force and contributes to just pretty much every sector, whether it's restaurants, tourism, construction, landscaping, roofing, fishing, whatever it is, and at least giving them the tools to continue contributing in our community and be able to make a living. So I think that's the one that I'll speak on. So that, if you guys want to keep talking about 287G, I'm happy to chime in too, but I think everything that needs to be said has also been said by every other member.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up the licenses. I was actually here, and it was a Hispanic woman and a lawyer with a dream that realized that there was a loophole in the South Carolina driver's license system, that for a moment in time, it did not specifically state that you needed a social security number. And that is what they went to court with, and that is what allowed that. And 9 months, it took 9 months for the powers of be to be like, oh, not on our watch, and shut it down. But for 9 months, people were able to get driver's licenses, which was instrumental. Again, taxes, identification, safer things. So I'm going to go ahead and pivot over to Gabby real quick on any legislative things. She's like, not me again. On any legislative things that are important to you that you feel candidates need to know about their Latino voters.
I was talking about it earlier, but again, education is very important, especially here in Beaufort County, our school district. I feel like in the news, y'all have seen we've been through a lot, from political tension in school board meetings to major debates on how like resources are kind of being put everywhere. But now leadership is kind of going through its challenges, and it's more important to kind of focus on what really matters, which is the students, families, and fairness. The current superintendent right now, Dr. Rodriguez, he's led the district through some big changes. He did 2 bond referendums that brought in over 780 million for school improvements and salary increases that made our teachers pay some of the highest in the state. Um, at the same time, he's faced criticism over transparency and how inclusive the district really is, especially for families that speak Spanish or come from immigrant backgrounds. So we have that new candidate, Mrs. Sylvia Wright, who is currently running. And she's been a teacher, she's a coach, she's an administrator in South Carolina, and is campaigning on a whole child approach, which includes mental health, career readiness, and more local control. And that's a big, big, big shift to the current leadership style that we have, which is kind of like a down style. But for me, it's not just, it's kind of isn't just about the personalities, but the priorities that they have. I want to see legislation that protects languages across or accesses in all school, ensures that families of all backgrounds are included in their decision making, and and again, transparency, as I stated earlier, when it comes to how our schools are being funded and who benefits from those funds. And then beyond our local schools, I care about that South Carolina still denies in-state tuition to DACA recipients. I feel that if they've lived here their whole lives, they've played the sports with your kids, they've actively worked here and contributed to the high statistics to Bluffton School and Hilton Head School and Beaufort County school testing, they should be able to go to either public colleges or private state colleges. And that has to change. I feel like everyone deserves a fair chance to succeed, and education should be an opportunity, not a barrier or kind of like low-hanging fruit for us to try to grab at. But yeah.
Thank you. All right, Julio, any legislative information or things that you wish our candidates would pay attention to as far as the Latino voter base? Where's your phone?
Got this problem again.
There you are. There you are.
All right. For us, me as a builder, business owner, I think We need help. And we can get that help from the builders. Don't leave everything up to us. We already putting a lot into the table. I think the builders need to put their hands together and help us too. Let's help each other. All the builders around the low country say something, but looks like everybody got quiet. They leave everything to us. We got to put everything on the table, but they don't want to risk anything. What about those big companies, landscape companies, that got more than 200 employees? What about the roofing guys? What about siding guys? Everybody. They need to get involved too. Let's help each other. Let's get everybody involved. Let's do something. Let's just speak out. I was talking to one of the builders, and what they said, go and talk to somebody. I told them, why you don't help and talk for us too? I can go and talk to somebody, but the more we get together, the better it will be for everybody. I mean, that's if something happen around this area, is going to be big problem, huge.
Yeah.
And the
Agreed.
construction industry.
Agreed. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a very serious note that spreads into different legislative matters, you know, that go into wages and making sure that, you know, workers aren't being exploited, and making sure that those things are equitable and fair for everybody. Because, you know, those problems are not necessarily problems that are just our level problems, you know, they go higher. And so it is important to draw out those individuals that quite literally benefit from this population, right? Like, that's just the reality of it. So we're gonna go ahead and shift over to our last question, because I want to be respectful of people's time, especially our panelists and everyone who's attending. I know we're coming up, so I'm gonna go to Carolina first with our last question. Carol, what do you want out of a candidate? When you think of someone that is going to represent you, what do you want to see?
I want somebody that works with our community, not against it. I want somebody that doesn't dehumanize us as a whole, right? Somebody that looks for representation for us too, you know, to make it more accessible, especially like Gabby was saying, in schools, like to have Spanish speakers, you know, there, or somebody to, you know, translate a lot easier for these parents so they could understand what's going on. And someone that also, you know, what Sebastian was saying, helps out with licenses. Right now we're in a moment where, you know, TPS is being taken away in September. Those people, they're not going to have documentation at some point. These people have, you know, driven here their whole life. Well, they had TPS legally, and you know, they have businesses. They apply. They go to school. You know, they have their whole life here, and you know, we need candidates that understand these processes and what we need. But I think the licensing and somebody that fights for that and fights for our community, I think it's very important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Italia, what's important for you for a candidate? What do you want them fighting for? You're muted. Italia, you're muted.
Sorry, I hit it twice. I think one of the most important things in a candidate is compassion and understanding that if you're going to ask us what we need and you're going to listen to what we're telling you, then don't just say, oh, here's what I've given you and that should fix all your problems. You know, a lot of times when I'm speaking to candidates or people, you know, in government, they're like, well, we did that. We did this project. And I'm like, we didn't ask for that. Nobody wanted that. So I think a lot of it is, again, making sure that they close the gap in knowing us as their constituents, that they find and they connect with those groups of people that are advocating and trying to strengthen the community and trying to build this cultural bridge that is so necessary. I think that, you know, that you just, sometimes we overcomplicate things. And sometimes those in politics, will muddy everything. They muddy the water, so nobody really knows what they're saying or where they stand. So I think a good, clear, compassionate, loving person that wants to be a leader to the entire community as a whole, no matter what you look like, no matter what language you speak, no matter how old you are, and not just to those people with all the money.
Right. Thank you. All right, Sebastian, what's important to you in a candidate? What do you want to see them do?
Yeah, I have a pretty clear idea of certain things that I would like from a candidate. I think one of the first things is to recognize this as more than just to like really view us as residents. And the Hispanic community, you know, they're so prevalent in our labor force. But I think you sometimes feel forgotten whenever you're just only being thought of when it comes to just work, right? And so if it'd be cool to just feel like, you know, that you guys got our back. And I think that that can be achieved in a number of ways. Things, events being bilingual or translated is a great way. Um, Having some type of committee created to track the community's impact in the labor force is also something that's very useful. For example, a lot of immigrants that come into the community end up finding whatever job that they can based on whatever connection that they have. But if there was a place where they could go and say, hey, I'd like to look for a job in X, and that relationship was already fostered with that community, with, you know, builders, roofers, Julio's company, my family's company, whatever, where we say, hey, we're looking for somebody with X, then it'd be easier for people to find employment. And I think that that's also, not to go on a whole spiel about that, so key and instrumental, because I work with a lot of victims of human trafficking as an immigration attorney. And most of the times that people end up in trafficking situations, it's when they're just arrived in the United States, they don't know anybody, and they end up taking the first job that they can find and end up working 100 hours in a week for minimum wage or less, no overtime pay, crazy work conditions, and they just get taken advantage of, right? But I think if there was at least that effort to help, um, you know, foster relationships between the existing businesses and people that are looking for jobs, it would help create situations where people aren't being taken advantage of, but also the community would be so receptive to something like that.
Right.
Just acts like that are just clear reminders that we're considered. It's something that demonstrates that we're needed. And, you know, we're very warm people. It's not that hard to approach us as a community. If you want to have a chat and have it over some coffee or have it over whatever, right? It's not that hard to approach us as a community because we love engaging, we love socializing. And so it's not, it shouldn't be as difficult in order to break into our community, right? We've had plenty of Latin festivals hosted by Bacaba or La Isla, where some type of presence would be appreciated. People would love to see that, and they would love an opportunity to come and chat and just voice their opinion. Maybe they're going to talk to you about some story from 5 years ago. Everybody's got a story. You just listen to them, and they'll be so happy, right? And so I think there's just some type of effort to connect, maybe to help with employment and to, you know, stand up for us, because right now the political climate, I mean, it's pretty evident that there's so much tension, right? Immigrants, and during the pandemic in 2020, many of those immigrants were out on the fields putting foods on our tables before they even knew how deadly the pandemic was. How about the stats of, hey, did you know that immigrants contribute billions and billions of dollars in taxes? Or maybe stats about Beaufort County, if that info is available. Just hearing those things and putting out positive messaging, it's not only going to make the community feel better, but it's also just good for people to hear something fresh and hear something positive. Um, so I think those are the main things that be looking from a candidate. And I don't really think that they're like the hardest things to achieve in the world. I mean, a lot of that information is already out there. All it takes is a tweet or a message on Facebook or a video or a clip or just coming on a Saturday to a festival. It's not a year-long commitment. Maybe something like that committee is, but it's just it's one of many ideas. And if you show that engagement, I can promise you the community is gonna stand behind you. And not maybe not every single member is going to be able to vote, but eventually they will because there's going to be people like me that are trying to help them get established in the country. So um, I think it's we're very loyal people, and if you stand with us, we will do everything we can to support you and also help you, achieve whatever your goals are as well.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to shoot it to Gabby and then we're going to wrap up here.
I guess I want my candidate to be someone who kind of sees the bigger picture, kind of like what Mrs. Italia said, someone who works to close the gap between our community. I want leadership that's data driven, transparent, and rooted in equity and not just performative talking points. Um, that just me, sorry. This means kind of an understanding of how public education works, housing, economic development is connected, and how our communities of colors and working families and immigrants are often left out of the equation. Um, in Beaufort County, millions of tax incentives have been given to developers, while many of our public schools remain underfunded. So with our families being priced out and benefits of with this rapid growth, it's not reaching the people who need it the most. And I think the party currently in office is really showing us that we really shouldn't be scared to do these things that need to be done. We need bold leadership, someone who listens to our voices and aren't usually ignored, who uses data to back every decision and stands 10 toes down on business, and who isn't afraid to disrupt systems that protect the privileged while leaving the rest behind. And I'm just looking for a candidate who doesn't give us verbal jargon or political blah, 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 or doesn't say the right things. I want someone who writes equity into policy, ensures language access, and expands in-state tuition to local graduates. And this delivers the results that actually reflects everyone's needs that call South Carolina home.
Thank you. All right. So that's going to conclude our session. I'm going to shoot this back over to Kathleen in just a moment, but I want to thank all of the panelists for joining and thank you for your thoughts. And Kathleen, take it on.
Okay, well, I just want to close up by thanking everybody for sticking with us tonight. This has been a very informative session. To our panelists, we couldn't appreciate your voices anymore. Thank you for sharing your lived experiences with us. This is how we all learn more from one another. This is how we grow our coalitions. This is how we stand in solidarity together. This is how we empower the people in our communities. So I cannot thank you enough for being here to share with us. I am going to go ahead and put, we have more of these sessions here upcoming, and I'm just going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. To register for any of the remaining sessions, just visit our website. And I think that wraps it up for this evening.